Welcome, everybody, to the City of Farmers Branch study session for Tuesday, April 16th. Thank you all for being here. Our first item of business is A1, to discuss regular agenda items. Councilman Roman.
I don't have anything.
All righty. Councilwoman Bennett.
I'm good, thank you.
Good. Councilman Jackson.
All good, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilman Merritt.
I'm good at the moment. Thanks, Mayor.
Excellent. All right, moving on. Since Administrator Garcia is not here at the moment, we're going to move to A3 and receive the plan report from the city staff on the 2024 Water Conservation Plan. And then we'll come back to A2 as soon as he gets here.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. The state of Texas requires any entity with more than 3,300 connections to provide to the state an updated water conservation plan every 5 years. Plans must be submitted to the state by May 1st. That's why we're coming before you tonight to hopefully get it adopted before May 1st. And then, like we said, every 5 years they have to be updated. Last update was in May of 2019. The plan has a narrative portion, then also a utility profile. You have to build out the utility profile first before you move on and submit the narrative. And then one of the big parts of the plan is, there's two main parts. One's the utility profile, and the other is to establish 5 and 10-year targets for water use. And they measure that in gallons per capita per day. And there's 3 categories that would be total water use, residential water use, and water loss. Other plan requirements include universal metering. That simply means global metering of anybody who has water service, whether it's city or other retail accounts. Meter testing, repair, and periodic replacement. And a rate structure which does not encourage excessive water use. The term I think we use is inclining block rates for our rate structure. And then, of course, leak detection and repair, ongoing proactive monitoring of the system, whether it's our own folks in operations or if we get calls from the public. We get out there and we fix things as quickly as we can. And really, that was a short and sweet presentation. I know you've got a full agenda tonight, but we're ready to entertain any questions you may have. And that's our water conservation plan.
Very good. Thank you so much. Councilman Roman.
I'm good.
I'm good,
Councilwoman?
thank you.
No questions, Mayor.
Councilman Merritt.
Just one, just to make sure that the public knows that there's no extra conservation requirements that are embedded in this particular plan.
Correct.
This is simply a report to the state on a number of the facets that you've already outlined.
Correct. That's
Okay.
correct. Yes.
Thank you.
So-
Appreciate it, John.
Thank you. So I think that was going to touch on my question also, because I wanted to know what has changed. And if nothing has changed, it's just updating, changing the date on the submission to the state, and we're going with the same plan.
There may be portions in there where we have to update certain data, and certainly utility profile changes, right? Because you also have 5 years of past history that you have to update, population projections, things like that. So
Okay.
things do get updated.
Okay. And then with respect to leak detection and repair, is that from the city standpoint, or does that include maybe educating the public on what to do?
Both. There's a portion of the plan that speaks to public education and outreach, but also anything that we can do to minimize losses, so that the proactive monitoring for leaks, but also leak repair. If you have a large water main that breaks, one of the things we have to do is not only repair it as soon as possible, but also estimate as accurately as possible what that loss is, because that goes into your numbers for water loss and overall usage.
Okay. Well, so case in point, and I hate to use myself, but I just turned in for a water leak. Never saw any ground. Never saw any water on the ground. Never. but had a leak. Didn't know it until I got my bill and saw that. And then I ran outside to look at my meter, and it's just sitting there spinning away. And again, never saw any water. So whatever was leaking was going down.
Right, I had one of the same, yeah.
And so I don't know. People need to know if there's some recourse for them available, then maybe that's something we mention in an upcoming branch review or something.
That we could do that, yeah, sure.
Okay. Anything else? Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job, Ryan.
So we'll continue to move on with A4, which is discuss city website improvements and data accessibility.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Mark Samuels, the Director of Innovation and Technology. And this afternoon, I'm going to walk you through a discussion about some of the challenges we have with our current city website. And we're going to weave in a little bit of discussion about data accessibility as well. So the first thing I'd like to do is just show a slide here that kind of represents what makes up an ideal city website. So what you see is the web page that you go to, and that kind of represented at the top of the iceberg. But below that, there's a lot that goes into making a really well suited website for a community like ours. You've got to have intuitive navigation and search. That's something we struggle with a little bit. You got to have current and relevant content. Online services and integrations, those are really key. Your water bills, your court payments, all that sort of thing are expected. Transparency and open data, we struggle with that a little bit too, but that would be access to ordinances, minutes, KPIs, those sorts of things. And mobile optimized, and I would say mobile first this day and age, right? So that's where we're headed. Most people, if you look at the metrics, view websites in general on a mobile device, which would be a tablet or a phone. So I'm going to walk you through kind of in categories what I think are some of the current challenges of our website today. And then I'll talk about some of the things we can do to improve it, proposed improvements. So website management, that means it's governance of the website. And we manage our website in a decentralized model. So what that means is that each department is responsible for their own content. And in those departments, there are content creators, and that they publish what you see on the website. Now, the communications department, Jeff's team, is involved in that as well. And there's folks in marketing and parks and others that are involved. But a lot of times, it's just an admin or someone in the department pushing content to the website. And those folks have had ad hoc training at best, and so that's an opportunity. The limited governance, what I mean by that is that since it is decentralized, you really need a governance model to manage it. And that would be defining your processes, defining training, what are the best practices and requirements of the site, making sure that's well defined, and making sure there's a review process. And I'll get into more of that as we go along. Missing review workflows, that's kind of along what I was saying is, instead of having someone in a department publish directly to the website, maybe that should go through a series of checks and balances. Reviews, content review, and most importantly for us, a technical review. Because a lot of that is what's challenging us now with search, is we're not putting the right technical elements in the content to make it searchable. Navigation, I would say it's not that intuitive. Our city government websites, not just ours, are typically built around the structure of the city, what we do, the departments that we have. And a lot of citizens don't understand our org structure, nor should they have to figure out what they're trying to do on our website. So I feel like we could be better and more intuitive. There's too many clicks to get to content. It's buried deep oftentimes. And sometimes the most important stuff is buried deep in the website. And what's really important it's not as important, rather, is more readily available. So we got to get that right. We use a lot of city jargon too on our website. It's typical when technical people do technical work, and as an IT person, I can speak to that for sure. It's hard not to include some of that jargon. So I think it's important that we know who our audience is, who we're writing for. And so making sure we look for that and clarify any jargon that's out there. And there's no engagement props in navigation today. What I mean by that is I want to, what? Make it easy for people to do the most common things and say, I want to blank, like pay a water bill. I want to apply for a permit. And it takes you right there. So you're not clicking through and trying to figure out where to go. The search. I've heard many complaints about search. And I will say that please stop me if there's anything you want to add to my list. I'll pause at the end of the challenges section just to see if there's anything I missed that's a hot topic for any of you as well. But I think search is something we're all frustrated with. It's limited. It's missing some data sources on the back end. Like the website that we have today does not have a lot of opportunity to connect to other systems and sources. So we want to resolve that. That'll create a more robust search opportunity. There's no way to filter options right now either. So like if you're getting a long list of query results, there's no real way on the site to filter that down to more about what you're looking for. And that would also auto-suggest would be helpful. Like if I'm typing in something, oh, are you trying to find a water bill or permits or whatnot, or a police department, or what are you looking for? Content. Again, I'll touch on that. It's outdated, irrelevant, a lot of it, just to be honest. The sheer volume of it, there's pages get created over years and years, and without a mechanism to, like a tickler or something for someone to go check that content for accuracy and relevancy, those pages can just stack up and you end up with a really bloated website. We're missing metadata, and that ties back to that search component. Whereas if you don't have good metadata, you're not going to be able to find that information easily in your search. Accessibility features, we've got some new ADA requirements coming up that we're going to have to meet. So I think that's something we need to be conscious of and aware of and work toward to make sure the site's accessible to everyone. And again, I mentioned this earlier, the limited governance model. And that really is, there's no process for which the content, again, is marked for future action, like a deletion, a review, that sort of thing. One of the things that we don't have on our website, really, I think we have a page dedicated to it today, but is what I call key initiatives. And really, a lot of us look at that as CIP, like CIP projects, major city projects. So we definitely want to add a site for that. That's very important. It would cover capital improvements, but other city projects, major projects that we would define. But that would create a lot of efficiency, transparency, because how many times is the council even and staff for sure ask the same questions over and over again about a project? Wouldn't it be nice to just direct them there or go there yourself to see what the latest status of the project is? And it gives us a chance to tell success stories. We don't have an opportunity to do that today. And the last thing is external or data access. I call it external data access or external systems access. When I say that, I'm really defining it as access to things that are not the website, which would be our financial systems, our court systems, you name it, integrating in with external data, whether it be a full interface where you're interacting with it or just the data that we capture. We capture so much data, some of that might be useful to bring over. That also helps you with your global search capabilities. The more data sources you have, and you're able to tap into those. And using a data portal, which I'll talk about later in the presentation, really will help with that too, with your global search. There's a lot of integration opportunities there. And then the knowledge base. So I'm going to touch on this in a few minutes too. We're implementing a knowledge base for the CSR team right now. The team's actually implementing this week. They were in this room earlier today, putting this system in. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. I'm excited about that opportunity. I'm going to pause here. Did I miss anything that's on your mind? Yes, sir.
Calendaring it is a big issue related to the events, the programs and meetings we have. It's a little clunky at the moment. That's my terminology. But I think others may have perspectives on that as well.
Yes, sir.
So one thing I thought of was on certain pages that are created, perhaps putting either a date created down on the bottom or, an effective date, something that shows the viewer, hey, if I'm looking at something that was, 5 of 92, I might need to check to see if there was a newer version.
Yeah,
something.
we'd like for that just to not be there. Ideally, one of the things I'll talk about here is ideally there'll be an expiration date on the content or review by date where that pops up and notifies people that needs to be reviewed for accuracy because things, information changes rapidly sometimes. And I think what we'd love to see the vendor do is give us the option to decide the frequency in which that data is updated because some data is pretty static while others changes more rapidly. So. Anything else? Not, I'll move on to improvements and opportunities for enhancements and improvements. So develop site governance process. I talked about that before. We're already in the process of doing that. We've got a web subcommittee stood up. We're building a governance best practices model for all the team members to use when they're creating content. We're going to incorporate an automated content review workflow, and I'll show you a slide on that in just a second. We're adding a content review with Jeff's team, and we're adding a technical review using a contractor. Since we don't have a web master or web coordinator in the city, we're contracting that out to give us that technical review that we're missing. Incorporating regular training opportunities, that's important as well. And our technical resource luckily has a background in that, so she'll be training as needed in the beginning. Any folks that haven't gone through training or need to brush up on training, we're going to do that immediately. But we really would like to stand up regular ongoing training opportunities for these folks who are entering content. Better use of data and analytics to drive decisions. So what we're doing right now is we're building reports and we're using metrics to look at how the site is being used today and actually use heat maps and other tools to see where are they abandoning, where are they getting lost. Where do they stop clicking? So there's all kinds of information we can use, and also will tell us about what content we can call out that's not like mandated or required by legislation that we have on the website. If it's just stale content, let's get rid of it. And those metrics will tell us that. Navigation. Sorry, apologize. It is allergy season for me. Organize content into logical, and I say for the user, categories and subcategories. Again, when we look at how we redesign navigation, putting that constituent first and not aligning it with what we're used to in city government, our org structure. Ben's mandate, 2 to 3 clicks to relevant content. That's important. And we're not gonna be able to do that for all content, but the goal is if it's highly utilized, relevant stuff, let's don't bury it somewhere. Let's get there in 2 to 3 clicks max. Simplify menus and the site structure. That just kind of goes along with it. That'll be a future project when we're looking at how we're going to redo the site in the fall. That's coming up. Our vendor allows us to redo every 5 years, and that comes up soon. So we're going to look at how we can simplify that and implement robust search. So we're going to push on the vendor, look at what tools they have. We're going to look at external products that we can procure and add on or bolt on to the site to improve that. We'll also talk about a data portal in a second, and that is another great opportunity for search, for integrated search. And then those click action items, like I talked about before, I want to pay a water bill, go right to that. I want to, I will drop down, pay a ticket, go right to that. So this is that process improvement I was talking about. You'll see in the red box here, we're adding 2 steps. Before, it was like the content was developed by the department and it went straight to the website. So most departments who publish a lot of content are really good at publishing content. They have folks in their departments like parks and others that there's so much content they're pushing out there, they're really pretty good at it. There's a lot of departments that push content out that they may not do it but 2 or 3 times a year. And so they're just not as good at it, and they don't They may not know how to write in the city viewpoint, or they may have a lot of spelling errors, or they may not know how to format a photo properly or add metadata or meta tagging to an item so we can search for it and find it later. So we're excited that we're adding 2 layers of review before something actually goes to the website. It's an automatic workflow that happens in our content management system. And that will improve search. That metadata and that indexing is very important. If it's not indexed right, search doesn't know how to find it. It just won't. We have that problem with Laserfish too, and other tools that we use. If you're relying on OCR, which is just optical recognition of something, it's going to find it probably, but you're going to get so much other stuff you're going to sift through. It makes it very challenging to actually get what you're looking for. So can you search it? Yes. Can you search it well? No. That's where metadata comes in and tagging and really doing that right. And that's in any system, really. If it's the website, and it's also like Laserfish and others. One of the things we're trying to educate departments on, if you're putting data in Laserfish as an example, you've got to tag it right, but that metadata, otherwise you're relying on OCR, and boy, is that going to be hard to find later on. So indexing of that site content, put the meta tags in, the site can then index that and give you a better search result. And like I said before, implement that auto suggestion feature. Did you mean this? Are you looking for that? Plug in additional search sources, tools, improve search results, more robust search, more inclusive search, other than what's just on the website. One of the things too is a lot of integrations to websites that we have today are really just a link. So like if you're jumping off to Intergov for permits or something, it may just be a page that's integrated in, but it really is not, you're not integrating truly into the system. It's just a jump off point to get you into the system. But it's hard to search that because it's really 2 different systems. So I can't search from the website what's in Intergov because it's truly not interconnected. It's just jump off point, right? So we want to try to resolve that too. The data portal is a great opportunity to do that. And then monitor and analyze search results. That is really important because if you do it right, you can actually see what people are asking for. You can see what they found and what they didn't find. Those analytics are critical because that tells you where you have issues and where to go solve them. If you don't pay attention to that, you're not going to know that people are always looking for X, Y, and Z, and they're not finding it. And there's no reference to it on the website at all. Well, maybe we should put that content there or make that content easier to find, for example. Speaking of content, use that data to look at relevancy of the content. The page data, the metrics will tell you a lot. And again, if it's not required by law that it be on the website, I think it's fair game that we should look at that and say, is that relevant? Is that necessary or not? And cull that stuff that isn't. Just slim down the website. I know everybody thinks their stuff's most important, but our metrics will tell us whether the citizens and constituents think it's most important or not. And produce content in that clear voice, the city voice, free of a lot of jargon, unnecessary technical terms. Remember, writing for the audience, and ensuring that the content has a review by and or expiration dates on it. So, Mayor, you shouldn't have to look at the bottom of the page to see that. We should be able to handle that through the system. And of course, incorporate those accessibility guidelines, make sure we're ADA compliant. We want to make sure we're inclusive.
Mark,
Yes, sir.
can we make, on that point 3, when we talk about content, produce content in a clear and concise manner, Jeff does a wonderful job. I'd like to see the city make better use of him with more videos. And maybe when we start explaining other things in detail, we've got a video accompaniment or something like that, which might help keep people's attention.
Absolutely. Great idea. I talked about the CIP portal. Adding a portal with CIP projects. And I say CIP, but I really mean major projects. It could be a construction project at a facility, but CIP is what most of us refer to those as. But I want to make sure you understand that it's more inclusive than that. And that would be a dedicated section on the website, dedicated pages where we're talking about the project objectives, the timeline, the budget, the milestones, general updates on a regular frequency, whether that be weekly, monthly, quarterly, it really depends on the project, right? Engaging the user with some content like tell the story, especially on the larger ones like large parks projects or something really cool that the city's doing, tell a story.
Videos.
Tell why you're doing it. Do what, sorry?
Videos.
Videos, Billy, right. Use those visual elements, the multimedia elements to tell that story. Like snap a photo of a major road project, not to pick on Public Works, every now and then just to show the progress. That's much more engaging than a static page of numbers and words. This will give us an opportunity to do that. And it's, get those consistent and timely updates. Otherwise, the citizens are going to not trust what they see on the page. They're not going to go back to, they're going to start calling you again because they don't trust the data. And I think it really promotes transparency and efficiency because it tells everybody what's going on, what the status is proactively, and the efficiency comes from just not having to answer all these questions over and over again. So the data portal, I'm really excited about the data portal. We're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, and I think it's in the next presentation as well, the one Tammy's doing. It's really about transparency. And a lot of cities are doing this, and they're offering a portal that's very searchable, and it plugs into a lot of different systems. And it's like a big old search engine with all kinds of data, and whether that's visual data or data you can download, it's really a neat project that a lot of these cities are taking on. And it's engaging, what you can do with it. You can share the data, you can be collaborative with it, you can use it internally. There's an internal component and an external component. So we could use it internally for staff as well to be engaging and make better decision-making with the metrics. And it's efficiency, it's self-service. So a lot of you may know that we get a ton of open records requests here. And a lot of those open records requests are the data. Departments pull the same data over and over again and deliver it to whoever's asking for it. With a data portal, you make that data available and it's self-service. You go plug in the dates you want that data from, it'll spit out a CSV or whatever, you can go do what you want with that data. There's no reason to tie up city resources providing data. Let's just make the data available for self-service. And again, improve search through integrations. The more we tie into an open portal like that, the better the search is. You may want to go there to do your search. If we bring in Laserfish and we bring in all sorts of stuff, that may be the best place to search. You may find going to the data portal gives you the best result. So tonight, or this afternoon, sorry, we talked about some key areas. I just want to reinforce what they are. Content management, that's that workflow, the publishing tools, the integrations, the analytics, improving that area. Putting in a knowledge base, I'll talk about that in the next slide, I believe. That's what we're implementing right now. It's going to be a game changer for this organization, especially for the CSRs. Imagine the information that we have to know in an organization. And we're a small city, but still we do 30 different things as a city government. We don't just do one thing. We don't make an item. We are not in manufacturing. We do everything from firefighting, public safety, to street repair, you name it, right? So you understand. That knowledge base is important internally and externally. That CIP data, getting that data out there, making it available to the public, regular updates on projects, kind of what's going on, showcase some stuff, leverage mapping, Esri, showcase those projects. And then the data portal, again, aggregating, presenting data in different ways, whether it's be in a table, in a column, in just raw data, or if you want charts, graphs, however you want to see it. It's got internal, external uses, as I mentioned, great search options, various data sources can plug into this, and this will get better over time. The more we plug into it, the more we integrate to it, the better it gets. This is a quick example of the CIP project pages that we're building. We're building this internally using GIS resources, so there's no cost for this. Our IT staff worked with Parks, Public Works primarily to put this together. This is just an image of it. It should go live at the end of the month. And then it'll also get better over time. More and more stuff will be added. But you're going to see basic information like what is the project, where in town is the project, what's the fiscal year, cost, start, end dates, that sort of stuff. So it'll be a neat way to zoom in and kind of see what's going on around town. And if it's a certain part of town you live in and you want to see what construction's going on or other improvements, it's a way to go right to that visually as well. So the last two items are the knowledge management system that we're implementing right now is called Live Pro. It's a way to consolidate knowledge into a single searchable source of truth. Not many cities are thinking this way, so I'm excited about the opportunity here to do something a little bit different. I think if anybody could benefit from a single source of truth, it could be city government, because we have way too much information to keep up with. It's easy to manage, it's intuitive to use, and it'll readily deliver accurate, consistent information, whether internally, whether you call a CSR on the phone, or whether you go to the website and type it in, the same data will be used in both places. You should get the same answer. As I said, same thing on the website. It'll be available there as well. And we're the first city in the United States to use this solution. It's being used in Australia and the UK right now, but we're the first. They're expanding in the US, and we're the first US city to use this system. So we're excited to partner with them on this project. OpenGov. This is the partner we have chosen for Open Data Portal. A lot of cities use OpenGov. You can search just do a Google search and you'll see a ton that pop up. I'm going to give you an example of Sugarlands. I just went live on theirs, I think just a few weeks ago. But it's that, like I mentioned, that data visualization, sharing, that enhanced search, citizen engagement, performance monitoring, all your metrics can be there. How are we doing against our core metrics, our core council objectives? It gives you that collaboration and transparency. Internally, like I said, there's internal uses for it, external uses. Not all data that we put in this system will be external facing. If public safety wants to use this tool to analyze and aggregate data internally, awesome. It's up to us whether that makes it to the public. And that efficiency is what I'm super excited about, because I talked to the city secretary's office and I've talked to some of the departments like community services that get the bulk of these requests. It's painful producing all this data. I'll give an example. How many permits, construction? That data over and over again. How many fires have we had? How many garage sales? You name it. What data? All that data can be readily available. You can go pull it yourself. And I've got a note here. This was planned for next fiscal year, but I think Ben's been able to bring that to mid-year. And so I'm super excited to kick this off sooner than later, because the sooner we get it started, the better, because it'll get better over time, because we're going to have to integrate into it. So it's going to get better and better. The more data sources we add, the better. This is Sugarland's page. I just want to give you an idea of what a page like this was. This is their top of this. I had to break this in 3 sections. This is the top. You've got a great search bar up here, and we can make it look however we want to make it look. There's custom to us within reason. So we can decide what tiles we have down here, what's important to us, what kind of graphic we have, but that big search bar is right there, and it's prominent because the search is excellent. Below that, the groupings. Again, you can choose how you want to group it. We can decide that. And this one's done grouped by the city's 8 strategic outcomes. That's Sugarland's council's strategic goals. So that's how they group theirs. And then below that, it tracks the popular data sets that are being used, new and recent data sets. So you can kind of see, and you can export these into any format you want. I know, David, that probably resonates more with you, but isn't that neat that you can just say, well, I want to put this in I want an HTML, I want a CSV. Download it how you want. You don't need to involve city staff at all. And then costs. So CIP doesn't cost anything. We're using an already owned Esri solution. We're just staff time to build that. So that CIP portal that I talked about, there's no cost to do that, just staff time. And the Open Data Portal, it's actually a little less than this, because it's been prorated. And then when I built this slide, it was about a month ago, probably when I started this, actually less as we prorate on. But year one is about $83,000, and what that includes is the Open Data Portal access, but also the deployment services for the first year that go along with that. And they'll teach us how to integrate stuff, and we'll take it from there. But the first year includes their help in training us to integrate. And then years 2 and 3, if we do a 3-year contract, it'll be static at $74,000 a year for that service. Let's talk timeline. So what we're doing right now is we are pulling data. We're running analytics. We're building reports. We're looking at how the website's being used. We're improving our governance process. We're writing those best practices right now. We're going to get those out to the web users, content developers. We're building that content approval workflow in the back end of the system. We got the vendors' help to get that mapped out. Notifications go out saying you have an item to review. The technical people get it. The content reviewers in Jeff's department get it. And so we'll get that whole process going. And then that'll add that technical content review, which I'm super excited about because we're publishing stuff that's missing metadata, pictures of the wrong size, it's not mobile friendly, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll be able to eliminate a lot of that and then streamline the site content. Using those metrics, we're going to start calling pages. We're going to start removing stuff, and I know I'm looking around at my peers to see what some of the reactions are going to be. But we're going to start removing some content, streamline the content. And then we're going to train any of the web content producers that need training, that haven't been trained recently, or that have questions, even if it's just one-on-one questions with Susan as our technical resource. We'll make sure they have the training they need to do the job we're asking them to do. The next big step in Q3 is data and content. Get those project pages out there, make sure they're robust, start telling stories, not just a website on this is the status, but tell some stories and use some of the other elements. Get that knowledge management system integrated into the website. It'll be up and running this week, but it's going to take time to get that content in there. And so once that starts, once we feel like we have enough content to make it worthwhile, we'll integrate that. And then again, I talked about we're going to continue to streamline that content even on Q3. That's going to be a project that's going to last for a while. And then it's time to start looking at our new site map development because pretty soon it'll be fall, late summer, fall, and we'll start looking at redoing the website completely, complete overhaul. The future stuff I see is a chat bot, integrating that using the data that we're building here to use an AI engine. Enhanced search, obviously, is talked about that a lot tonight, this afternoon. The data portal, that actually will be, I put an asterisk there, that'll actually, looks like that's going to happen sooner than later if we all approve that tonight. And then begin the website redesign process. That takes us into the fall and winter months. That's when that's due. And then just beyond long-term stuff, complete that redesign. It'll take a few months to do that. In that mobile, we're going to take a mobile-first approach. We have no choice. We have to do that. Continue to add open data sources. Continue to add to that FAQ knowledge base. My goal is no FAQs. The FAQ sections on the website, gone. Get rid of them. Use knowledge management to do that. Knowledge management gives you the ability to put expiration dates. This data needs to be reviewed. This data has gone through 3 levels of review before it even reached the website. We can't do that with FAQs. FAQs are a module of the website. They're static, and they've probably been there forever. And I just like to see those gone and really expand the use of the knowledge management system. Expand and enhance key project information section. Again, that CIP stuff, that's just going to get better over time as we add more content, tell better stories, add more video, multimedia, make it kind of engaging. And then just further refine our processes, that content improvement, continuous improvement. And we've got a website steering committee we've stood up, and they're going to drive this continuous improvement. So it's not just fix it and go back to our old ways. We have to focus on the website, and you can have a decentralized model for content, but you have to have resources assigned to make sure that that content is relevant, that it's accurate, you're following best web practices, it's accessible, et cetera. So that's really important. And I know I talk really fast, and I'm really conscious of the time, and I'm happy to answer any questions or take any feedback that you have.
Thank you so much, Mark. Councilman Roman. Councilwoman?
Thank you so much. You know, this was in contention for me, so I feel you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Jackson?
Thank you, Mark. The website has gotten a little bit better over the last couple of years. The calendar was an improvement from before, but it's still clunky, and I tend to get lost in there.
Yeah,
And content's not consistent from one department or page to another.
exactly.
And so I'm very glad to see particularly the review processes added in there and a little bit more central management
Yeah.
of that. I think is important, and just all the newer technology.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You good, Rich?
I'm good.
All right.
Okay. Councilman Mayor.
Mark, you know this has been a passion of mine since almost day one, so thank you for championing this going forward. I like what we see in the proposal. I think the one thing perhaps in the longer arc, if you will, is perhaps looking at putting that contractor in the staffing in the long term.
Agree. Yeah.
So as we grow and we refine these processes, I understand upfront contractually, that's the best way to go. But in the long arc, I'd like to perhaps see that we have that knowledge on site to facilitate this in the continuous improvement.
Yeah, a lot of cities do have they don't call them webmasters anymore. I think that's an old term. They're web coordinators, and really their job is to, again, do what our contractor's doing. We think this is the, expedient way to get this going, and I think it gives us a chance to evaluate it. Maybe the contractor approach works for us going
And it
forward.
may.
Maybe it doesn't. And I think that's a good point. But it gives us a chance to find out. And no more just publishing content directly on the website and hope for the best. And everybody's doing a great job. You have to understand we're decentralized. So you've got, administrative assistants or managers in departments who are now asked to be a web expert. I need you to publish web content. I need you to get it right and follow best practices. And it's tough. So you've got to have that review mechanism. Otherwise, we're going to end up kind of where we've been.
Otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, Mark, thank you. I think this was great, and I think we're headed in the right direction. I'm really big, having owned a content marketing video company, on having videos on our website, embedded in the website, not just on our YouTube page, but
Yeah.
in the website. We got great talent in-house, not only with Jeff, but also with some other folks. And so when it comes to CIP projects or anything else, a great example was Hoya Park.
Yeah.
I drive past it every day when it was being built. And so having a time lapse, and I know we did some of that, but we've got a supervisor on site every day. So it's not hard for them to say, stand here, take a picture, upload it. And so we're creating that content on the fly, if you will. But it shows residents that, hey, we want to make sure that you're in the know.
That's correct.
And so whether it's a time-lapse thing or a video, whatever, I think those are good things. Anything that we can do to make information easier and more accessible to our residents is a huge plus.
It's an expectation now.
So thank you, make it happen.
Okay, we'll make it happen.
Yeah, y'all work the magic.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Is he on the phone? I'm going to try to go back to A2, which is to receive presentation from Dallas County Election Administrator Hyder Garcia regarding enhancements made to the election process and security measures. So I know he had to step out and take calls, so hopefully he'll be right back in. All righty. So welcome again. Judge Jenkins. So everybody, this is Hyder Garcia. He's Dallas County Elections Administrator. So you're up if you want to sit, stand, whatever.
I'll stand.
But if
That's
you want to
okay.
stand, yeah, the
Oh, the
podium so we can hear
Okay.
you.
Oh, wow. Okay. Let's put this out. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, members of the council and everyone else here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Hyder Garcia. I'm the Dallas County Elections Administrator. And I didn't bring anything to show you. I didn't want to make this, that's my latest thing. I didn't want to make this death by PowerPoint. And I will say before, the gentleman who was here before, outstanding. I want to talk to you about a lot of those things. We're trying to do a lot of similar things in elections, right? Expose the data, reduce, I need your card. So going back to us. So I've started in Dallas County 3.5 months ago. Before that, I worked in Tarrant County. I was the elections administrator for 5.5 years. I'm a computer engineer by trade. That's where my education comes from. For almost 13 years, I worked with a voting machines vendor. And so that's kind of how I got into this whole mess of elections. So I understand you have a lot of questions about election integrity. So what we can do is kind of tell you what's happened in the last 3-4 months, and then just let, any questions you may have. I followed in office Mr. Michael Scorpello. I don't know if all of you have met him before he left. Really good guy, big name in the elections community. He retired, right? There were some initiatives that he was working on that we continued. One of them was this payroll system we have for poll workers now to reduce some of those issues we had. So now they're getting direct deposit, they're getting pay slips, things that they didn't have in the past, right? Dallas County was also coming out of this huge administrative issue, changing their Oracle Fusion platform, whatever it was, and it was a mess. Michael did good things, started that, we finished that project. The other big thing that we tackle in these 4 months, we use, when you vote, I'm assuming everybody here has voted, right? Votes, you check in on these electronic poll books. Now, not just because we are a countywide polling place county, but also because in early voting you can do it. You can vote anywhere in the county. We need those poll books to tell each other, hey, Hyder just voted here, make sure he doesn't double vote over there, right? So they have to be connected to the internet. One of the issues that Dallas County had in the infrastructure was those poll books were having delays in connection. So one of them could be offline, let's say an hour. And then if during that hour, 100 people voted, when it came back online, it would just feed that to the rest of the poll books, and you would see these jumps. And there was a lot of discussion about, is this ghost voters, or are they changing numbers, things like that. I really put a lot of effort into that. We fixed that. It was one filter in the whole network of communication. Got rid of it. Traffic is flowing good. So those were the two kind of big things when I came in the office. One thing that I did get from one of your constituents was the whole ballot numbering, right? I had a meeting with him, and he explained his concerns and some of the things they had. The poll book thing was one of them. The other one was the numbering of the ballots, right? So it's kind of a long story, but the Texas law requires ballots to be numbered, and it says starting with number 1. There's 2 ways you can do that, right? You buy the blank paper with the serialized number on it, and you use it to vote, or the newer machines that we have, they can number paper as you go, okay? Dallas County had opted for the pre-numbered serialized paper. But the way it was being done, the county had bought, let's say, 2 million sheets, and they were using this first chunk, and then on the next election, this part, and then this part. And so they weren't always starting with number 1. That was something we just looked at, and it turned out to be a procedural, operational efficiency thing. So now we're doing that. We're buying a batch of ballots. Every time an election starts, we're going to start with number 1. And I managed to find a way to do that without wasting too much money. We didn't want your May election bill to look, 10 times higher because we're always starting with number 1 and we were disposing a ton of ballots, right? Things that people probably don't give it a lot of thought. We have 1.4 million, bless you, we have 1.4 million voters, registered voters in Dallas County. And I know that in a May election, maybe 150, 300,000 people vote. We still have to have enough supplies for 1.4 million people to vote. Because if you put a bond out in Farmers Branch and your usual turnout is 7, and then all of a sudden it's 14, I can't tell your voters, I didn't think you were going to show up. I'm sorry, we didn't buy enough paper. So, we're constantly trying to find that balance between buying enough for everyone, but not wasting a lot after, right? So that numbering thing, that was addressed, that was fixed. It's been more of a preemptively buying things and figure out, how to hold an inventory of the next one before we use it and then restock as we go. We had some discussions with one of your constituents also, and I asked him to serve on the Central Count Board. Just look, there's no better way to learn, to understand, and to verify the process than being on the inside, right? So why don't you sign now? He actually had coordinated with the ballot board alternate judge that you signed in the contract. If you remember the contract you signed, you appointed Chris Patton and Mike Slayton to be on the Central Count Board, but Mike Slayton resigned. So we have that vacancy, and so I don't know if this person who's from Farmers Branch and wanted to be on the board is going to be on the board, right? But we'll work with him to bring him on board, whether for the runoff or for the November election, right, so that he can serve. But that's one thing that we've been trying to push and work with some of these groups with interest on election integrity is there's no better way to understand the process than to be a part of it, whether you're an election judge, a Central Count Board member, a board, signature verification board member. Any one of those roles will tell you, hey, this is how things actually happen. This is the process we follow. I see a hand up.
If that doesn't work out with that particular individual, can we submit another applicant or candidate for that?
You can always, my job is to kind of balance out things between a lot of different electeds, right? So we're serving the entities in May. If it's a May election, it's Commissioner's Court who does the appointment. So through lists that we get from the parties. So we kind of have to work out this, give us the names, we'll try to give them to the parties, tell them to put them on the list, and I'll take them to court and just, my role is going to always be that sort of middleman between all of you to figure out, okay, how do I bring everyone to the table and try to work out something that we can all live with and we're happy, right? We had some questions also about cameras. Michael was big on cut anything I don't need and bring down our budget and cut expenses. And one of the things that happened last November was we had 4 cameras in central count where we actually count the votes. And he had brought it down to 1. I didn't know it was a big issue until in the primary. Again, some of your constituents expressed concerns. And it was as simple as an email to the vendor, all right, turn the other 3 back on, right? So they're on, we're planning to keep that. We're applying for a grant, security grant. There's a couple of security grants we're applying to. And one of the big expenses we want to do if we get that money is to get a whole new streaming camera system to cover a lot more areas in the building so that you can follow with better resolution and more, bigger footprint every step inside the building where the board meets, where the ballots are stored, you know, a few of those things that have been asked about. And hopefully do it in a cheaper way. This vendor we have is ridiculously expensive. But it's what, you know, it's what was in place, so dealing with that. That's a lot for 4 months. That's where we are. That's where we're going. There are not a lot of changes in place right now except infrastructure things that we have to deal with. We have a voter registration vendor who just sent us a letter that we didn't like, pay 35% more or be out. So that's a big problem for us. We got to figure out. That's like our whole back-end system. And so we're trying to upgrade our inventory chain of custody system as well. A lot of the things we do, when one box goes from one person to another, it's handwritten forms and paper. So pretty much of that mindset of we can put it up in the cloud and automate that, that's going to be easier to share information, right? Rather than scanning, 12,000 pieces of paper to put them on a cloud server for people to download if we can get those records electronically out. So you're going to be hearing a lot more of that coming from the elections office if I'm here that long. Modernizing, transparency. How do we make information easier to access, more accessible for the public, right? Not just for the sake of transparency, but because I don't want to deal with 500 public records requests a month. If I know how to find the information, they're going to be happier. I'm going to be less busy. Other than that, I think this is the part where I say that's kind of what's going on. Do you have any questions or any concerns? And probably that's going to be a better use of everyone's time here.
Yes. Councilwoman?
Oh, no, thank you.
Okay. Councilman Roman?
I just wanted to thank you for the progress that you guys have made, as well as communicating with those residents and making sure that their voices were heard and offering an opportunity to be involved in the process. I think that goes a long way. So just wanted to thank you for your efforts and for being here today.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay. Councilman Merritt?
Thank you. Mr. Garcia, thank you for coming out. Thank you for meeting with us. And I also want to convey, and Mayor Lynn, you and I were both in attendance during Commissioner Summerman's town hall recently. You gave an elongated presentation with all of the equipment that was presented for that. I want to commend you on addressing the concerns of the community, not just here in Farmers Branch as you're doing today, but to the county overall and the work that you're doing. And I'll echo other comments. Thank you for the work that you've done so far in educating and being transparent to the operations of your organization. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Jackson?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Appreciate the update. Is there a process in place to recertify voting machines after you've had them in inventory for so long or they've been used for so long?
There isn't. And there's a lot of misconceptions around that process, right? The way it works, state law. That's not a county policy or a local policy, it's state law.
Right.
You have to buy equipment that is certified. You don't have to recertify, you don't have to retest, you don't have to go to the state. It's not like a driver's license that expires or something, right? You get it, and until such time when the state says this equipment can no longer be used, you can use it. The same equipment you bought 5, 10, 100 years ago, right? That's a process they call decertification. So one of the responsibilities the Secretary of State's office has is to keep up with changes in the law And if the law now says something that your equipment can do, that's when they decertify the equipment. So, and I'm going to be extremely superficial with this just to make the point, right? I do that a lot. I say stupid things just to illustrate the point. But let's say that a law passes and says, oh, voting machines have to be pink. Well, ours are white. So if the law goes into effect January 1st, 2025, the state would say effective January 1st, 2025, this equipment would be decertified. Now, we would have to scramble out and go and buy new machines that were pink.
Right.
Until such time that they find something where they say, hey, this is now no longer going to meet the letter of the law, what you bought, you can keep using. Now, in that process, just like your phone, you buy version 10. Then the vendor certifies version 11. They'll usually do it for one of two things. They're seeing us work and they're like, you know, there's a better way to do that. Let me add a button so you can do this, right? And we're happy for those. Or there's a bug, a defect in the software, and they have to make a new version that corrects that bug. They have to certify that again. And so there's that layer of software that runs in the hardware where you can keep your machine and you can say, well, okay, but now install the new software. That's the only case where you would have to, again, kind of go back to do some sort of paperwork with the state to say, you're authorized to use version 11. But if 10 works, it's certified and you have no issue with it, you can write it out until you dispose your equipment.
So these machines being connected to the internet,
The poll books,
to the poll books.
the electronic poll books, not the voting machines, the electronic poll books.
Okay, help me understand the difference between a poll book
Right.
and a voting
So
machine.
think about the paper process. First step is you go to that big book where they had everybody listed, right?
Right,
And then, all right, you show your ID, you sign the book. Then you move to a second table where the ballots are laid out and they give you one.
right,
This is poll book.
okay,
Check, you are registered, you are the person you say you are, and what ballot we have to give you. This is voting. This is completely offline, but this has to be online so that if you go to an alternate location, they know, so you can't vote twice. But once you pass that process, this is completely disconnected. Just like in the manual process, we can't know which ballot we gave you, right? And it's all up to the poll worker to guarantee that you won't grab two ballots from the table or put two in the box. Same concept. This
Okay.
one checks, you don't check in twice, then there's a manual process of giving you only one ballot.
So other than software updates by the manufacturer or changes in law, there are no other vulnerabilities with the voting machines that would prompt your office to put in a policy to recertify them or have them recertified?
Correct, because you have a valid certificate, right?
Okay, all right.
And you wouldn't recertify. We don't, the responsibility of certifying them is not on us. We can only buy what has been certified.
Right,
So if I go to Georgia and I say, wow, those machines are awesome, can I buy those? Nope, that vendor hasn't certified that in Texas. So once we buy certified, that's it, right? Unless we get decertified, we don't have a need to go back to do anything. If that vendor would want to come to Texas, they have to go do the federal certification, then the state thing, and then they can say, all right, guys, now you can buy from me. But we're not the ones actively seeking to certify equipment. We can just buy what the state has said. That's your catalog, which currently it's just two vendors.
so do your 2024 machines, for example, do all the same things that your 2018 or 2019 machines do?
So Dallas County particularly switched equipment in 2019.
Okay,
So they would have the same capability, but they were physically and software different, right?
Different
But
machines.
they both complied with the state requirements. They had the certificate from the state saying they meet Texas law and they meet federal standards. And then from 2020 to now, we've done one upgrade of software on the machines. And again, the state says, yeah, you can buy that version from ESNS, is our vendor, because that version meets and has been certified to be Texas compliant, I guess you can
so
say.
the vendor has certified this, the upgraded software on those machines, I think you said that already.
Correct.
All right. What about poll worker training? Are there any changes or plans to enhance poll worker training, hiring additional staff to ensure that polls open on time, are staffed appropriately throughout the entire time that those polls are open for business?
One of the things that I would say I probably have a different approach than Michael, to put it those terms. Michael used to work with, he had a great foundation of what we call projections, right? So what's been the usual turnout in every polling place, in every location, for every type of election? And then, all right, it should be within that margin, so you're good with 10 machines and 8 workers. I don't want to be back here with you guys asking me why your constituents were an hour too long in line or out of paper, so I've kind of opened those margins a lot more. So we should have more than enough people. You might have noticed in the primary. Now, it's not going to be as big as the primary. The primary for me, it's a matter of balancing that risk, right? How back in the primary get, we didn't know. So that margin was a lot open. For May, it's quite sufficient. We always have poll workers on standby. So we always have enough people. I haven't been worried in Dallas and in Tarrant. I think North Texas has a lot of people just willing to step up. I'm not concerned about that part. The training, we're constantly looking at what were our calls about during the election, and is there a pattern we're seeing, right? So, they never call about the ballot and seal line for the signature, but this time they're all messed up. Did we change the form? Should we change the form? Why are we having this, right? And try to retrofeed that into changing the process, the instrument, and also, or covering better in training, right? So it's just usual feedback of what were our top 5 issues, and okay, what's up with that in training, right? Why did so many people get this wrong or call about this? So that's kind of our natural process around that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. First, again, thank you for coming and spending this time with us in Farmers Branch. I know we've had some residents that have been very active in making their thoughts known to you. But, to me, it's real simple. We want to have as much confidence and surety in the voting system as we do in our banking system, basically.
I
Put
agree.
money in the bank, you want to know it's there. Nobody's going to take it. We want to vote. We want to know our vote gets counted, and there's no shenanigans along the way. I've thought back because back in 1982, I was a precinct chair, and we did things the old-fashioned way. We had stacks of ballots. It was sort of like a checkbook, and this is what I don't understand, because it should not be that hard. In your checkbook, you have a pad of 50 checks. If you write 30, you got 20 left.
Correct.
If I had 30 people come vote, I've used 30 ballots. They're numbered not by the machine. They come pre-numbered. And if I start with, I won't say I start with 0001, I might start with 25065.
Correct.
Okay. And from there, I've got X number of ballots. It's just like reconciling a checkbook. You
Correct.
either have this many people who voted, so that means of the total ballots you received, you've got this many ballots left over that were not voted.
Correct.
Okay. So, and as I'm understanding that we're getting back to that. or
Dallas
trying
has been
to.
doing that before I got here. Michael made the switch in '22 to that numbered ballot system.
But those were machine-generated numbers first.
No, since 2022, Dallas has bought pre-numbered serialized paper. Before that, it was blank paper that was serialized by the machines. But in '22, the practice started in Dallas County.
Okay. So that's huge. I think right there, that's a huge step forward. I did have a question regarding polling places, the number of polling places. Okay, last election, we had 5 polling places in Farmers Branch. We're not that big. You got one, Lowe's Fieldhouse, which is in Dallas, which is like 30 seconds from Farmers Branch. But you have Brookhaven College, which is in Farmers Branch. We have the library. Okay, we don't need 5 polling places. Save yourself some money or spend those resources in other parts of the city where they need help. Because that's really, for a city our size, it's too much. So, in my opinion. So,
Is that in a May election or in a November election, or are you talking in general?
in general. So last May, I know we had 5.
Okay,
So you might want to take a look at that. And
I do, and it'd be great,
I made that comment to Stacy prior to,
yeah.
but
But FYI on a couple of things. It's different depending on the type of election, right? In a primary, the party decides where they want their polling places, that's it. We have no say. In May, you do. We have no say. In November, the county does, you don't have a say, right? So it depends on who. Now, last year, a bill was passed, I think it was 924, Senate Bill 924, which changed the way we have to select locations and the quantities of locations. And that forced us, in a November election, to have a lot more. One of the projects I have for the entities for next year, for next May, because by the time I picked up on it, it was too late, we were already in the contract, is you can have less, but you have to go through a process where you draw your own election precincts. You have the authority to say, we're not going to use the county lines, because you don't have the limitations we have. We can't have an election precinct split by a congressional line. But in May, you can. So you can draw a map that has bigger precincts, and therefore you'll end up having smaller locations. But I need to kind of coordinate with you and all the other entities, so we have one map, you all adopt it, and then on the next May, we probably can come down to maybe 300 sites, and maybe in Farmers Branch, we make it one big precinct, you'll have 1 or 2. So it's going to be a little bit of balance of what we can do with what you want to get, and
so you'll
mix and
communicate
bake
that
all
to
of
the
that,
city
yeah.
secretaries?
Yes, at some
Okay.
point, we'll be asking you, hey, please adopt these so that we can have a lot less in May.
Perfect. Last thing I had is, how often are the voter rolls purged for dead or moved, deceased, or people who have moved?
Pretty much every day.
Okay.
And here's what I mean. There's only one big purge process, right, where we tell the system, go find all these records and make them inactive or cancel them. That's every 2 years, and that's voters who haven't shown up or, after a process. So that's easy, because you tell the system, hey, anybody who hasn't voted in the last 2 years, make them inactive, or if they've been inactive, cancel them, that's it, they're gone. The rest is ongoing work. And so sometimes we find out that somebody died on the monthly report we get from the district clerk, or on the one we get from the courts for felonies. We also remove voters from the rolls using that data. Sometimes it's because they tell us. So there's no set time to do these things, other than that one big biannual maintenance. And so that's why if you have people who are monitoring voter rolls, you're going to see the numbers kind of go up, and then after every presidential midterm in January, you see that big drop. That's the purge job. Everything else is kind of organically happening as we interact with other agencies and people.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all I have. So, thank you. I appreciate
easy.
the information. Anything else? Anybody? All right.
Well, just one last thing. Anyone, I don't mind doing this repeatedly. I mean, I'm not in your meetings. I know you're busy people, right? But if you have people who, organizations, local clubs, whatever it is, that, hey, give them my number. That, like, the number you have is a county number. Like, it's paid for so that I can take calls from people and answer questions, right? And we'll set something up. We'll do meetings like the one you both went to. Just engage with them, explain to them, give them facts, give them information. Right? I think that's important because second half of the year is going to be quite active. And so the more we engage preemptively in educating and recruiting people to be part of the process, I think the better off we're going to be for the end. So available anytime for anyone.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming here. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
And we look forward to smooth elections.
Thank you. So do I.
Okay. Next up is A5, discuss and review the city's financial status, revenues, expenditures, projects, balances, capital projects, fixed assets, and other items related to the 2023-24 mid-year budget, future city budgets, and long-range planning activities.
Mayor, Council, Tammy Zimmerman, Director of Finance. So tonight, we're seeking approval for the fiscal year 23-24 revised mid-year budget. And we hope to discuss the items tonight and formalize these revisions with an ordinance at an upcoming City Council meeting. So after the issuance of our fiscal year 22 and 23 audit, which was issued on March 19th. Finance staff reviewed the fund balances and the 6 months of activity in our fiscal year 23-24 financial statements. And we performed this mid-year budget review, and we hope to discuss with the council tonight, or this afternoon, some updates to our operating and our capital improvement program budgets. And these proposed mid-year budget amendments meet the financial objectives that were approved by council. Okay, so the proposed revisions, some of these are previously approved revisions that the council had already been presented with, and we were going to shore up our counts here with our mid-year. So this slide summarizes some of those council-approved revisions, and departments have brought forth requests based on if we have any additional unrestricted fund balance. So we'll go over the council-approved revisions, which we have the STARS Multi-Sport Facility Project. There was a change order that was approved by City Council. We have our SECO LED retrofit grant, and SECO standing for our State Energy Conservation Office. There was a match with that. And our Revenue Stabilization Fund. We had previous City Council discussions on having a strong available fund balance above the minimum target to maintain our AAA bond rating. And this is the mechanism that we can achieve that goal. And we had the departmental request. Some of these are for our fleet. We have a backhoe for our street department. We have a Gap Vax industrial vacuum truck that's in our utility fund. And then, as Mark Samuels, our IT director, already discussed, we have our OpenGov software. And there's additional police, traffic, and speed monitoring software that the police chief can talk to a little bit more about. And there was a slide that was included that went into more detail. And we have some major facility repairs that we're needing for 2 of our facilities, and there's an IT access control system upgrade. Okay, so the City Council approved revisions that were previously unbudgeted expenditures, such as the LED retrofit grant match and the STARS Multi-Sport Facility change order. We stipulated that we would formally amend the budget for these items at mid-year. So the first one, the STARS Multi-Sport Facility project, the City Council approved on January 23rd a change order for Lee Lewis Construction for around $454,000. This unbudgeted change order, we had specified it would be paid with interest that was earned on the bond proceeds. And to date, we have in excess $800,000 in interest income that can only be spent on this project. City Council approved also back in August of 2023 a restructuring of the rent payment schedule due from the STARS. There was a delay in construction, and so there was a restructuring of the rental payment amortization schedule. So we're proposing a needed increase to the project expenditure account of $800,000, which would use up some of the interest income, and an increase to our rent revenue of $439,217, which will align with our rent payment schedule. Now, the SECO LED retrofit grant, Council approved this back on January 23rd. It was a reimbursable grant awarded of $27,800. The city's match is 20%, so about $5,560. And so we will need to increase our grant revenue for the amount of the reimbursable portion and increase our grant expenditures for the total grant and our grant fund. And then we'll need to do a transfer from the general fund to pay for that grant match. And then we had previously discussed with City Council as well the desire to allocate additional funding to our Revenue Stabilization Fund. And this, I want to kind of go over briefly the history and the purpose of this fund. We established it with the 22-23 budget, I believe last year, about this time. And it's a way to allocate our general fund surplus, and it helps mitigate revenue reduction. Revenue reductions as far as restrictive sale legislation on property tax, specifically Senate Bill 2 cap, and the sales tax Comptroller Rule 3.334. So the Senate Bill 2, briefly, is just a reduced cap on our growth of our municipalities' property tax. It goes from 8% to 3.5% as the multiplier. And then the Comptroller 3.334 rule is a change in the internet sales point of sale from the seller's location to the buyer's location. And Farmers Branch joined a class action lawsuit, and that's still pending. I believe we joined that in 2021. Another reason we wanted to establish the Revenue Stabilization Fund, it serves as a fiscally conservative policy in maintaining high level of quality services during any economic volatility. And we'll use it, we hope to use it for any additional capital projects that are identified, interfund loans, economic incentives, unforeseen or unique one-time cost, or any funding delays. And so it also serves in bumping up our unrestricted fund balance to a target objective of 90 days. So our policy, our written policy is a 15% minimum in our fund balance, unrestricted fund balance, and that's 15% of your operating expenditures or a 20% high target. So this 90 days is more of a 25%. And this helps us maintain our strong AAA bond rating. It's the strong fund balance reserves. So we're proposing a transfer to the Revenue Stabilization Fund of $1,440,000. Okay, so these are some of the departmental requests that I wanted to go over. And we're proposing these departmental expenditures that can be funded with excess general fund, unrestricted fund balance. And the first one being a backhoe for the street department. We've identified that there's a need for a $200,000 backhoe. Unfortunately, it was budgeted in our utility fund fixed asset account, and it's the street department that actually needs this. So we are proposing a $200,000 transfer from the general fund to the general fund fixed asset account to pay for this street backhoe. And then there's a gap vac sewer vacuum truck. We are kind of somebody's loss would be our gain. We're hoping that we can purchase this. It'll still be brought forward in the, I believe, the May council meeting. There was another municipality that couldn't fund their order and could be a potential savings of $150,000. Our current sewer vacuum truck is over 20 years old. The total purchase price for this new one is about $560,000. So we're proposing an increase to our budget of $360,000 to the water sewer fund utility fleet equipment. Now, it's $200,000 difference because remember, we already have that backhoe that's already budgeted in there. So we just need additional $360,000 in order to purchase the gap vac sewer truck. And as Mark Samuels already talked about, we've identified some software that the city would like to purchase. OpenGov, which is a government technology software for reporting, accounting, planning, budgeting, and citizen services, $100,000. There's a police traffic software for speed and traffic monitoring of $30,000. And again, our police chief can probably speak more to that if there's questions. And we've identified some major facility repairs. We have substantial leaking roofs in our branch connection and City Hall. Those two have gotten quotes where $965,000 is what we would need in order to replace those. And then we already have budgeted a generator enclosure for the branch connection, but the quotes are coming in much higher. So we would need an additional $235,000 to complete that project. We have identified, or our IT director has identified, an IT access control system upgrade. This was deferred in last year's budget. It's $235,000. It would replace our older security and access control software platform. Okay, so the budgeted impact. Financial impact of these unbudgeted and proposed amendments is provided in this slide. So we start out with the very top number, that $23,413,424 is our audited ending unassigned general fund balance. If all of the proposed amendments are approved by council that I've just discussed, it would take our fund balance down to $20,285,264, roughly. And that is right on target with our preferred 90-day balance. And then the other proposed amendments are in other funds, and some of them net themselves out, or some were using down interest. For instance, the sewer vac transfer would come out of this water and sewer fund. We have the STARS Multisport. There would be an increase in expenditures over the revenues of $360,000, and then there's a net zero change to our grant fund. And before we get to questions, I was brought forward an item this past week where we'll need to include as well the proposed amendment for a 911 pass-through. It's a pass-through revenue. So the voters approved, and you may remember on your ballot, Proposition 8, and it was to establish the Texas Broadband Infrastructure Fund, which was in lieu of raising our 911 fees on cell phones. And it's a one-time transfer from the Texas Comptroller of about $155 million. So NTEC, which is our North Texas Emergency Communications Center, which is our 911 dispatch for 4 cities, including Coppell, Addison, Carrollton, us. They applied for this distribution on our behalf. And it's to be used for hardware updates to their 5-year-old NG 911 system. So we were just notified that our distribution for Farmers Branch will be about $197,000. And so we'll need to increase our revenue for the state distribution and increase the expense, because we'll take it in and immediately cut a check to NTEC. So net budget effect would be 0. And that is the end of my discussion. So staff is seeking approval on these revisions.
And so just to make sure, council, these are proposed. They'll come forward as a budget amendment ordinance, and then all the purchases that are above 50,000, which is most of them, you'll see come through. So the ordinance will have the transfers, but any purchases will also come back to council as well. So this is just getting guidance for which direction you'd like for us to lean. Do you like the recommendations? Would you like additional considerations? So.
All right. Thank you, Tammy. Councilman Roman.
I don't have an issue with any of them, but will you help me understand how long we've had issues with the roof at the branch connection and in City Hall?
Well, it's Vera, City Director of Finance for Facilities. The roof for Branch Connection City Hall has not been fully repaired. We've just done completed Band-Aid fixes for the past 15, 20 years. So those are your original roofs. That's why they're so decayed. When we had the last storm, that was when we said we need to include this in budget and they need to get fixed yesterday.
Thank you, Perla.
And then how many of the, I saw in there that we're going to be purchasing radars. How many of them are we purchasing and where are they going to be placed?
Radars?
I think, right? Or some speed?
Oh,
something,
you're
right?
talking about the,
There you go. Traffic measuring software.
So, Kevin McCoy, Chief of Police. So this is an attempt to get a little more efficient than we were being with the speed signs where we were actually required to purchase devices and move them around the city. This is a software company that we found that actually provides data to us on every street in the city broken down into segments, and then can break every street down by 24-hour, 48-hour periods, week-long periods, month-long, 15 months worth of data. So anytime we receive a complaint or one of you would receive a complaint about a street or a segment of a street where there's a problem, we'd be able to immediately go into the software, look at that street, determine if there was a speed problem, and more importantly for us, when specifically the problem was occurring. And it would give us dates, day of the week, time of the day, so when we deploy our resources, one of which you may see a little bit later on tonight out front, when we get our traffic division up and running, rather than send them to a roadway and say, hey, go sit in this block of roadway and see if you find something, we can say, go to this street between these hours, and try to be more efficient with our deployment of resources. We know specifically when we're having our problems.
Okay, so it's not more radars, it's a different approach?
It's not a device, correct, sir. It's
Okay,
software.
cool. That's it for me. Thanks.
Kevin, one follow-up question on that. You confirmed that data to one of the radar signs, correct, to see if it was similar? Could you
We
show that to the
did. While
council?
we were talking with this company, it has some broader uses. We brought Ryan into one of the discussions because there's some usefulness to this for traffic flow volumes for public works. To talk about the amount of cars on roadways during what times of the day. And other cities around us, Irving being the one that I reached out to, their public works extensively uses this data for their side. But we ran without telling the company until a little bit later on, we had a speed sign up that we already knew about, that we had deployed and had 30 days worth of data on, and then we asked them to run us a report on this roadway over the same period of time and ended up with almost identical data. So it gave me confidence that the data they were providing was good data. Same traffic volume, same 85% data. Everything was running about the same number. So from what I'm getting off of their data, and we've done a couple where Ryan and I met with them, and we did one where we had some of the IT teams sit in with us, and we went over the data, and it seems to be pretty solid, pretty useful information for all of us.
So is this a 30K every year or just?
It's a recurring, yes, sir.
Got it.
I don't have a problem with any of it either. I am curious, though, like Councilman Roman, on the roofs, specifically the one for the branch connection. Was any of that ever considered when we were going to bid to update the branch connection?
That was not considered me. This was prior to me taking over that position, so I don't have any prior knowledge of it. But I know when we took over the department, we did an analysis of the roofs, the HVACs, painting, et cetera. So cannot answer that's prior to me.
All right, fair. Thank you.
Councilman Merritt?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any concerns with what's laid out. It's the same question as my council members across the table related to other unforeseen costs that are coming to the table now. But I'm comfortable with what you've laid out so far. Thank you.
Councilman Jackson?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Tammy. Just one quick question back on the revised mid-year budget. If you go back a few slides. Wait a minute. go forward, sorry, to
Oh.
slide 7, I think it is. Yeah, there it is. So the 1.4 million for the revenue stabilization reserves. Now, I like that we're sort of over-reserving, using a preferred 90 days as opposed to the 15 to 20% measures. How did we come up with 1.4 million? Is that backed into because everything else? So if the backhoe was $400,000, this would be 1.240? or-
Correct. So in trying to get close to that 90-day target balance right there at the bottom, knowing these additional requests, if that was approved, what could we get that down to? It was a
Right.
formula.
Right, okay. All right, very good. Thank you. All good with everything else.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, good.
Tammy, I have a couple of questions, please. So, first of all, is it possible to move to 120 instead of 90? If that was our policy?
We can, we talked about that before, and in bringing forward this next cycle's budget, we will obviously shoot for that.
Okay.
It would be a preferred target. The more that we get as far as closer to the 120 days, we would feel more comfortable with. But it's going to involve our city council making some hard decisions.
Sure. I just wanted to
So, yeah.
see if that was possible. Okay.
Yes.
Secondly, regarding the backhoe, one, I'm sure Fleet has reviewed all of the assets in the city. Okay? Do we only have one backhoe? Or do we have multiple pieces of equipment?
We only have one working backhoe as of now, which is the one that we just purchased.
Okay, so I'm curious, was a lease, rent versus, option considered versus a purchase?
Absolutely, and that was actually looked at more, so May 7th, I'll have that for the VAXCOM. That was looked more at the VAXCOM, was a lease to own and a lease type of thing, so we always take a look at the leases versus purchasing new versus purchasing old, and that VAXCOM, like Tammy said, another municipality couldn't pay for it, so we're actually making a deal, and yes, we did look at that for the backhoe as well.
Okay. And the equipment that we have, I would assume all equipment, that can be shared by departments depending on availability?
Not the vac.
Well-
The sewer vac.
The backhoe, yes, depending on availability.
Backhoe, excavator, whatever.
Correct. Unfortunately, with the backhoe, if there's an emergency, if we had rain and we need to get debris out, so and we have another emergency, having one backhoe does kind of put us in a
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. That's all I had. So
Okay,
thank you very much. Thank you, Perla.
okay.
Any other questions for Tammy?
I'm just going to give one thing on the roofs. I went back and pulled historical data on our budget processes. In the past, it looks like the city was aligned to do an annual estimated roof repair budget, which was sitting between 25 and 40,000 for repairs, hence the Band-Aid reference, and an annual inspection in the budget. So very low cost compared to the roof replacements we're seeing now, which we need to do. And so that's why you're seeing them presented to you all in this fashion. But previous budgets show roof repairs, not replacements, going back about 4 or 5 years.
Right, but my question was very specific to the update.
And the renovation, it
and the
was not part
renovation.
of the scope.
Okay.
Okay,
Good.
I'll bring forward
All
then
right.
the revisions with an ordinance at the next city council meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, so in the next 27 minutes, I'll try to get the next 3 items in. A6, which is discuss and give staff direction regarding Firehouse Theater facility use agreement updates.
All right, Mayor and Council, Jennifer Rainey, Assistant to the City Manager. You've received much of the history, so I won't go over that background. We'll just kind of jump right in. So as a reminder, this is a previous request of Councilmember Jackson's. Last meeting, the ad hoc committee gave their updates after meeting with Firehouse Theater, and then council provided their recommendations on that agreement update. So since that meeting, those draft recommendations were included. You all have a red-lined copy of those of that draft agreement now. And this slide kind of provides those high-level updates of what was included in that red line, so that the utilities are now going to be paid for by Firehouse Theater. This is all in the assumption that they agree to it as well. So the updates include the utilities being paid for by Firehouse Theater. The city would continue to pay for the telephone due to that linkage to the fire alarm monitoring. Firehouse Theater would provide the annual report including attendance, performances, engagement. I believe that was community engagement that was mentioned, ancillary programs. And then there was also a mention about some ISD or some working with some children in our community as well. They would also provide updates to council upon council's request. And then that facility was valued at roughly $61,000 to $73,000 per year. And it does have an existing deed restriction in place for the public use. So that does kind of change that value where it's not as comparative as like properties because they don't have that deed restriction on them. And then the facility use year and other affected dates, this wasn't mentioned, but it just makes more sense to align that with our city's fiscal year. So that's a little bit easier to work through. And then there was finally that council liaison position that was added as well. And it is ready for your discussion.
All righty, any questions, Councilwoman?
I have no questions.
Councilman?
No, right now.
Okay, Councilman Merrick?
I do have one question on the red line, Jennifer.
Yes.
And I'm trying to find the correct location. It looks like it's on page 8. Trying to find this section. It looks like 4.2. I apologize, the pages overlap, so it's the covenants of the theater. Under item H and H.
Article 4.
Yeah, sorry. It's about the process where, under J, present such additional reports and information to the city to make, and such additional presentations to city council within a reasonable time, but in case not later than 10 business days. How did we arrive at 10 business days? And it goes back to the slide and bullet 2 or bubble number 2, provide updates to the council upon request. My concern is it's sort of open-ended. We could ask them about anything.
Understood.
And so if we're asking about anything, is 10 days enough time to address that? So again, I'd like to kind of focus on what we're asking in the updates and then perhaps giving them the appropriate time to address that.
Okay.
Because the way it's written, but in any case, not later than 10 days. And that's very harsh.
Understood.
That's my concern.
And based on the timeline for uploading an agenda for council, we might be cutting that close. Understood.
Fun reading at late night, so,
Lots of red lines.
thank you. That's all I had, Mayor. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Councilman Jackson?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jennifer. I've got a number of questions here. If we could go to section 3.5A. It talks about utilities and janitorial services, and it says the theater is responsible for paying utilities of the property. It also says they're responsible for paying for the fire alarm monitoring service. I know that the city's going to continue to pay for the phone lines required for the fire alarm, but is that fire alarm a city piece of equipment? Is that part of a lease agreement that is same as many other buildings? So does it make sense that theater's paying for that, or should that be?
I think you're correct, Councilman. I think that the city would cover that.
So fire alarm monitoring service needs to be moved to 3.5B. And in 3.5B, it says cities shall be responsible telephone lines, so there should be a 4 between cities shall be responsible for telephone lines in 3.5B. And then in 3.5C, cities responsible for janitorial services. Remind me again, what are janitorial services for this facility?
It's really good. Deputy Director of Finance Plate Facility. For Firehouse Theater specifically, they only go twice a week to clean up the trash and make sure the restrooms are clean for any of their practices, but it's actually during show times that they're there. So they'll send us a list of show times a week prior, and then we'll make sure janitorial staff is there to take up the garbage and make sure the event space is clean.
Shouldn't that be on them?
I kind of feel like that's not a city expense. If the building were empty, the city, I would think, would be responsible for that, but I don't believe that I think that in the spirit of the changes we're making in the contract otherwise, that would be an item that would be on the Firehouse Theater. If that's agreeable to council.
And when we do the janitorial bid, we do put Firehouse Theater depending on show times on there.
So Firehouse Theater's janitorial services are connected with other janitorial services we're providing on all other city,
One holistic contract, yes.
one holistic contract, okay. Twice a week plus performances.
Which will also be on May 7th for the janitorial contract.
Again, I think in the spirit of all of the other changes that we've made to the contract, that janitorial services would be something I would expect to be the theater's responsibility. And then I want to go to section 4.2, Article 4. I think it's G2. Let me find it here. Article 4, G2.
Which one?
Article 4, G2.
G2, G.
So it says a description of others. Let me back up.
It's H2.
My mark is over the top. Okay, it's H2. There's a provision here that is requesting the theater to report to the city events conducted by the theater, whether they're at the city facility or elsewhere, including for each event, the title, time and date, location, purpose, number and attendance, whether it was open to the public or by invitation only, or whether there was an admission fee, sponsorship fee, or other fee required in order to gain admission. I don't recall discussion around this particular provision, so I'm wondering where that came from. And secondly, are we entitled to information that goes beyond the facility itself?
You can ask.
We can ask. Okay,
So in terms of entitlement, there's nothing that's a prohibition, but you can ask.
okay,
If it's helpful, then why not?
all right. Feel like it's a little much?
Remember when we talked to them, if I may
Yeah.
add some background, they told us the other things that we were doing, they were doing.
They were doing, right?
And so therefore, I think that's perhaps where that started.
Okay.
And now it's seemingly expanded on a little more detail.
Yeah.
And I would concur with you that the little more detail is probably not necessary.
It makes it feel like we're kind of overstepping our boundary a little bit, but I would like to hear, and again, back to the conversation, the whole point of them coming and reporting to the city, the goings-on at Firehouse Theater was to really promote the Firehouse Theater, and I'll let them tell their story, but they're doing other things to supplement the revenue, obviously to accommodate changes we're requesting in this contract, but just changes in their environment alone. So if there's I understand, we can ask for it, but if there's a way to maybe soften that just a little bit, I'd be appreciative.
I would concur.
Okay. And 614B2. 6.14 B2. Where'd we go? Here we go. Most of the way through this paragraph, I'll kind of start toward the middle. Productions thereby generating additional local sales and use taxes for cities, supporting the retention and/or expansion of businesses located with cities' corporate limits. I imagine that's supposed to be within cities' corporate limits.
Yes.
May just be a typo that needs to be fixed. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome. I just had one question. That was regarding the use of the building and who gets the revenue if like a outside group not associated with the Firehouse Theater wants to rent the theater for use for a night on a night that it's not being used, or as has happened in the past, a political candidate has rented the theater. Does that become Firehouse Theater revenue, or does that revenue go to the city?
I'm not sure on that. I would want to double check on that.
Okay. I'll leave you with that.
Thought, Mayor, there was a provision in here regarding,
I may have missed it, so.
and I want to say,
Isn't there a deed restriction that prohibits that?
It must be used for public use, yes.
Because 5.2, I mean, the city has the right to use facilities or permit others to use facility, but I didn't see anything specific to that, so.
point one has some language regarding the use of the facility. It may be just general use.
Typically, when somebody wants to use a theater, they'll call and try to reserve it or book it through the theater, so.
I think David has something to
Yeah, I do.
contribute.
I'm about to interrupt
Oh.
anyway. So I didn't see anything in here other than a prohibition against assignments that would prevent the theater itself from subleasing or allowing others to use the theater. The concept, though, under this agreement is that it's our theater. We are licensing it to them on a non-exclusive basis. We can license it or let anybody else that we want to use the theater under the terms of this agreement. But I don't see anything here that clearly prevents them from being able to sublease. And I'm just using sublease in a casual term, not a legal one, to sublease to somebody else other than a prohibition against assignment. So they, in theory, could lease it out when they have, when they have the rights to use it under the lease or under the license agreement. But you all understand that these amendments give the city some pretty substantial authority. I mean, we're reviewing all of their productions. We're reviewing virtually everything that they're doing at the theater. So we have the ability under this agreement to impose reasonable objections. And so that may be enough to prevent them from, subleasing and getting cash from a third party for a production that we're not in favor of. But if there is a desire for something in here that would limit or restrict their ability to do that without our consent, that's easy enough to write in.
I think given their production schedule, they're busy enough with their own work that there's not a substantial opportunity for them to sublet that building and per se have a windfall. My immediate concern in doing so, though, would be just liability. If we were to sublet to somebody for a night or 2 nights and they come in and they tear the place apart, is there sufficient protection for us that's on them, and that do they have the right protection in place to remedy?
That's actually a good question. The agreement only requires them to have CGL comprehensive general liability insurance of $1 million, but it's our facility. There's nothing in here that requires them to maintain any kind of a builder's risk policy, for example. But we, I believe, have insurance through TML, the Intergovernmental Risk Pool, that should cover damages to our to our property, and this is our property. There are provisions in here that would require them to indemnify us in the event of damage to the real estate. And they're required to restore the property to its condition and at least as good as it was when we first gave it to them. So there are some protections there, but ideally, there would be something in there that would require someone to maintain insurance, but our own insurance may be sufficient to cover us in the event that that happened.
One element for you all to also consider is in our citywide rental policy, which doesn't list the Firehouse Theater, there's one clause in there that allows us to block rentals that don't align to the city's values of who we are as an organization to prevent a disruption to the fabric of the community. And so that's one thing is when you see a city facility, regardless of who rents it, they associate it with the city of Farmers Branch and maybe even endorsed by Farmers Branch. So that's one other consideration to think about. And that's why we have that statement in our citywide rental policy that we can refuse to rent should it run contrary to the values of the city as a whole. So food for thought is, in this case, if they did rent it, they could rent it to anyone, and that may be a concern as well.
I mean, I don't necessarily have any concerns around that, but in reviewing contracts, if it can happen, it will. So we want to try to protect against that.
Just to add in a little bit more information, we do have the permitted use. Maybe we can get a little bit of extra information on that, but permitted use means the use of the facilities by the theater for the productions and for no other purpose.
Where is that?
That is on the
Definition section.
definitions, top of page 3.
Very early.
Okay. I think that's sufficient to address what you're speaking of, Mayor. Okay.
All right. You good?
Good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on, A7.
Well, I
receive-
haven't finished. I have a question.
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to confirm from you that the permitted use does fulfill what we were just talking about.
Yeah, it does. The short answer is yes.
Okay. The other question I had was, I saw in the contract that in section 2.6, it says that we're going to be reviewing and approving their production schedule. Why would somebody include a section like that in this type of contract?
Well, it's a non-exclusive license agreement. If we have the ability to approve their production schedule, that gives us the ability to be able to put on our own productions or use the theater for other purposes. So it's non-exclusive, so we can still use that facility for other purposes. We would need to see their schedule in order to know what it is, so that we wouldn't interfere.
And then, so then I was looking sort of at the signature lines, and it still has Pete's name in there, so does that mean that you're going to be the one that's going to sign these documents moving forward?
Going forward, that is a minor change it's a non-substantive change that will be made, yes.
Okay. That's it.
Alrighty. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And before we move on, I just want to make sure I have clear direction for staff on this one. Is the council comfortable incorporating the changes discussed and going to the theater to make sure they're comfortable in meeting? And then if so, bringing this back to council for consideration for action. Is that correct? Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Anything further? Okay. Now we're going to move on to A7, receive an update from the mayor and council members regarding board liaison information from outside organizations.
So we had our meeting, and I do believe, correct me if I'm mistaken, but we'll have, I don't know when, a new director over the shelter soon.
Yes.
That has been hired. We do still need more volunteers, honestly. I believe that the chair resigned,
I'm sorry, say it again,
the chair
of animal shelter?
of the animal
Okay.
shelter resigned. So call out to whomever is watching if you're interested. We have positions available. And I believe we came to the resolution that they're going to reach out to a couple of other firms that actually will do some, help me with this, where they're going to do the, what we actually need? I know, there was a term for it that she used,
Christina, one of the board members, had
Yes.
recommended a analysis.
an analysis of use. So instead of just expanding, not unknowing what we may or may not need, a service will come in and assess that.
Yeah, I know in the past, she gave that report, and it was pretty thorough at the time, the last one I ever saw, but yeah, that should be easy enough. Okay. Anything else?
That was it.
Okay, Councilman Murray? Councilman Merritt?
I have nothing to report at this time, thank you.
Okay, Councilman Jackson?
Thank you, Mayor. For the Metro Crest Chamber of Commerce, the dust is kind of settling from some big changes, new leadership, the closure of the Farmers Branch Chamber of Commerce. I did refer in our last meeting to President Michael Gallup's vision for the chamber. And so I'll refer folks back to that to refresh on it. But one thing I wanted to talk about is after they had some initial challenges with a database provider. So there's some disruptions there that to get the members successfully merged into their database. But the reception in large part's been good. And many of the members have become moved over from Farmers Branch to the Metro Crest Chamber have become actively involved. And I thought it was very interesting to learn that 44% of the total membership of the Metro Crest Chamber of Commerce is represented by Farmers Branch businesses. I thought that was pretty significant, given the sizes of the other cities involved and the business versus residential makeup of the other cities, that Farmers Branch businesses hold such a material stake in the membership there.
Excellent. Okay. I'd like to report, and this goes back to what I said at a couple of meetings. I always think it's helpful for the council to know what the mayor's doing, so they don't think that the mayor's out there running his own show. So I just want to read down a list of some things that I have been a part of. One, I did go on a tour of Dallas, and it was really Dallas and surrounding communities that was put on by the RE/MAX office in Coppell. Mark Wolf is the broker there. He does this every year, and I have a friend of mine who's a RE/MAX agent. They had an extra seat on the bus. It was an all-day deal. It was continuing education for RE/MAX agents, or real estate agents in general, I should say. And it was very interesting learning about different parts of town, getting some historical perspective, and seeing what's going on there. The North Texas Crime Commission, last month they had a chiefs panel, which was really interesting. Had five police chiefs that were involved in putting that on, and just hearing what some of their challenges are. Obviously, number one on the list, I think, is hiring and maintaining staff. And that's just going to be an ongoing need for the police business. This Thursday is the next North Texas Crime Commission meeting, and they have the director of the Secret Service who will be there. She's coming in from Washington, so that'll be very interesting. I attended County Commissioner Andy Summerlin's meeting. Councilman Merritt was there. This dealt with election integrity. Hyder Garcia was there to put on a presentation. And of course, Commissioner Summerlin came here when we were discussing the county-sponsored housing program. I attended the DCEO, D Magazine, the DCEO Awards with staff and Councilman Merritt Jackson. We didn't win an award, but we were in the company of some really good people and enjoyed the evening. And gosh, there's just so much building going on, not only in Dallas, but just the Metroplex. It's just amazing. I would like to compliment again everybody that was involved in putting on the multicultural event. I thought that was a huge success, even though people were coming and going. The basis of a really good event was there. And this goes just beyond park staff also. I mean, police, fire, anybody that was associated with it that was on site. That just, it was a really cool thing to see in our city and experience all the different cultures that presented themselves on that day. Coffee with a Cop, that's always a hit. We had a number of people at PJ's Coffee that showed up for that, a number of residents. And so that's always a big success with our community. One thing in particular that I would like to do, I met with a couple weeks ago with the Metrotex Realtor Association, and I wanted to learn what is happening in the marketplace with respect to short-term rentals and the value of Farmers Branch. So I intend to invite them to come to a future study session to share some of that information with us. Obviously, short-term rentals continue to be an issue for our city, and we've got some residents who want to go from one extreme of banning all of them to the other extreme, let people do whatever they want. Well, there's got to be a happy median. And with Plano and Dallas being involved in legal action right now, it does not make sense for us to do anything until all of that is settled. So I keep repeating that to people, but I think anytime we can get information on what's going on in the market, and especially in our own city, that's helpful. So I want to have them come in and speak with us. Congressman Mark Vesey put on an event in partnership with the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition. It was really interesting, talking about the global economy, talking about the importance of Texas and the importance of the Metroplex feeding the Texas economy. The Texas economy, I think they said, was the 9th largest economy in the world. So our region is very important to the success of what's going on. And I'm talking to a guy at the meeting, or before the meeting, because they had a reception, and he was a retired lieutenant general. Well, he was the keynote speaker. He never said that to me. And super informative, just to learn how important our area is to the overall global economy and the leadership that our area provides the world. I went to a LEAD Summit for Sustainability. This is the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. That was down at the Convention Center, put on by the U.S. Green Building Coalition. I think that's right. Didn't tell anybody who's going. I just wanted to go and learn for myself, learn more about sustainability. And Alex walked in the room. So sat through some of that with him. And it's interesting to hear larger perspective of where things are moving or where people would like things to move. So I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that in the coming days. The Dallas Regional Mobility Commission, that is something that I'm involved with monthly. Talk about projects, basically transportation projects going on throughout the Metroplex. And that, I've attended those meetings. I went last week to the Regional Transportation Coalition meeting, the RTC, in place of Mayor Babick. There's billions being spent in our North Texas area to develop not only highways now, but broadband is falling under this communication umbrella. And so we're going to see even more money poured into the area to help underserved areas that don't have up-to-date internet access. And then, of course, I've attended 2 meetings, one today, as a matter of fact, from the MetroCrest Hospital Authority and the Carrollton Regional Hospital had very positive results for the month of February. So they continue to do pretty well. I say pretty well. They're still not delivering all the services that a full-service hospital would do. They don't deliver babies there. And then there's other cases that they just don't take. And so many hospitals, many have gotten out of the baby business. So it's just not a very profitable area for them. But I just wanted to make you aware of that, and if anybody has any questions about that, happy to go into it further. Again, I think it's important that you all know where I'm spending my time, what I'm doing to help market the city, promote our city. And so that is all I have to report on that. Next up is, where'd my agenda go? Item A8, discuss future agenda items. Councilman Roman?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Councilwoman Bennett?
Soft opening of the event center, venue 1842.
Councilman, is that all?
Yes.
Councilman Mayor?
I don't have anything to add at this particular time. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Jackson?
So Mayor, your recap reminded me, Ben, are we going to get a recap from staff on multicultural event results, attendance, lessons learned?
I'm sorry. Sorry.
Absolutely. Would you like that as a memo or as a agenda item for staff to present?
Just, I think in a study session item so that we can see that and discuss it openly would be great.
Perfect. We'll get it.
That's all, Mayor. Thank you.
We'll get those.
Thank you very much. Before we adjourn, I just want to let you know that this evening, we will work through our agenda, and after K1, I will allow public comment or citizens comment on K2 and K3, and I do plan to go into executive session to discuss K2 and K3. Councilman Baird should be here about 5:30, so he will be present for the meeting, but I'll make that announcement downstairs.
And then the only other thing is Mayor and Council, right at 5:30, maybe a couple minutes after, the police department will be bringing forward one of the Harley-Davidson motorcycles that's equipped and ready to go in Farmers Branch out front for you all to see it. So it'll be out front for you all before the council meeting starts and the public to see it as well.
Excellent.
So thank you all for your support.
Thank
Can we ride it? Can we ride it around the parking lot?
I have a license. All right, so we will adjourn this at 5:07. Thank you very much.
They are sweet-looking motorcycles.
No.